Ever fancy putting a river into your layout? I'll show you how I've just done mine. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie. Now if you're a regular on the channel, you'll know that these 4 tracks are coming out of the station and now they need to go right around the other side of the board. And I've now laid the foam for these 4 tracks and also the hidden DMU siding that you can see in the far corner. And this then takes me on to the next board, which I've got to figure out before I can really lay the rest of those tracks. And on this board you can see my proposed track plan. So the 4 tracks come on, and then through 2 points they become 2 tracks. They trundle down a little bit, and then there's another 2 points with a diamond crossing, and 2 tracks at the bottom come off into my industrial unit on the next board, and the other 2 tracks go straight on, which will go into the fiddle yard, which will be behind this huge amount of cable. So this leaves quite a large expanse of nothing, and the last thing I want to do is fill it with track. The town scene will be going up over here, so what do we do with this piece? So I thought, as I've got the viaduct at the other end, I would build a river coming through here, and then it would kind of flow through the centre of the layout to the viaduct at the other end. Now in the UK here we don't have easy access to something I think you call extruded polystyrene, which is a pink or a blue thick dense foam, and I know a lot of US modelers use it, and on top of the board they put this polystyrene, and then if they want a river, it's quite simple, you just cut your way through it and there's your river. So what I'm going to have to do is enhance my carpentry skills by cutting through this board, removing some of the bracing, and then installing the river and putting it back together, which can't be that hard, can it? It's only wood at the end of the day, isn't it? So here's my plan. Well, they say a picture paints 1,000 words, so here is my baseboard, and it's a 12mm piece of ply, and I want to install a river, and obviously 12mm with the 4mm to the foot that would be a 3-foot drop. Well, that's not quite deep enough for a river, so if I put another piece of 12mm ply, an offcut underneath that, and then another piece of 12mm ply running along the base, so from the, let's say, the surface to the bottom of the river would be 6 foot, and then I can taper that down and we have ourselves a river. Obviously what I need to do is to maintain the rigidity across where I'm going to cut the board up, and I've got a piece of sturdy CLS to do that with. I think CLS is Canadian lumber support or Canadian lumber supply. Anyway, big meaty piece of timber to go across here. So back to the paper plan. Now there are 2 sets of cross beams that run across the board, both this way and then straight down the middle, so we are going to cut into those. But what I think I'll do is, if I get the river to run kind of this direction here, with a slight curve on it to give it a bit more interest, and then when it dives underneath the tracks we'll have a bridge type affair there. But obviously I want to try to see underneath the railway as well as the river disappears off. So yes, there's some amendments to do underneath here by chopping up these timbers, and there we are really. So it's a case now of transposing these lines onto the baseboard and taking outside and take a jigsaw to it. So I've marked up the track layout, and now you're viewing it from the back wall. So this is the way it goes around to the layout and around to the fiddle yard. A little bit of an error there, but I think you've got the gist of it now. Straight point, curve point, straight point, diamond crossing, and then the river to take shape, something like that. So the first thing I need to do now is turn it over and remove the cross members that are going to be in the way. Well, that's a simple piece. Now, of course, I need to cut down here, there with a jigsaw around there, without, of course, cutting through the bench. I've lifted the board off this picnic table with some wooden blocks, so hopefully now, with this jigsaw set at 45 degrees, I should be able to run down and get the right profile. If it wanders a bit, it's not the end of the world at the end of the day, it's just going to be a meandering river. Yep, we're good underneath. Not such a bad start, is it? Right, so now I need another piece to go underneath here, both sides, with the same profile. Now, if I were to cut this piece, this offcut, and put it there, and then cut out this piece at an angle, I believe that will give me the ideal spacer. So now I need to trim that way, and then once I've done that, it makes perfect sense that if I trim the other piece the other way, then that will work as well. So those are my two lines. Is it enough for both pieces? Anyway, I'll try one and see what it looks like. Well, without clamps that was particularly challenging, but hopefully it should kind of fit. Hey, there you go, look. Lovely. Now if I cut straight down the middle of the... no. I'll now try and cut an edge on that piece and then see if I've got enough then to do both sides. So there's the second one cut, and if I offer that one in there, it's a pretty good match. So what I'll do now is I'll take the jigsaw and then just run straight through the centre-ish, which would give me those two halves. Hercules. Well, here are the two pieces, and I think it looks pretty accurate, to be perfectly honest, without patting myself too heavily on the back. So now I think it's a case of gluing these and clamping them. I got several sort of clamps, photographers kind of clamps, and these modelling clamps with some of the good old Gorilla Wood glue. So this allegedly dries within 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll check it out, shall we? Well, the Gorilla Glue seems pretty good. And after 30 minutes, that one's stuck good and proper. Right, another 30 minutes. Well, it's now the following morning, and these pieces of 12mm ply have stuck in very well, and that Gorilla Glue is, well, pretty good really. It's brilliant stuff. It's all a bit rough around here, but in the fullness of time, obviously I've got some work to do when I decide exactly what I'm going to do with features around this river. A little bit more work to do. I'm going to take away some of this edge so you can see further into the river underneath the railway, as the bridge face will come across here. And obviously now I need to come up with a riverbed, or well, I need to come up with a piece of ply to go on there, and then start to make this a little bit more rigid, and then of course fit the cross members. So I've nibbled out some of that timber so you can now see underneath the bridge from the top end, and obviously we need a riverbed. So I've got an offcut of another piece of 12mm ply, and if I kind of nibble the bits out here and then glue this one down, we should be okay. And then once this is in place, I can then start to think about the bracing. There we are. It's not too bad. It's kind of in the right place. I wanted to minimise the width of it so I could get the bracing in, and with the success yesterday of using this Gorilla Glue, we'll hopefully repeat the process. Okay, I'll be back in an hour. So now for the big reveal. And it appears to be successful. Obviously a bit heavy on the glue because quite a lot of it's come through, but that will soon rub down. Great. So now we just need to do some extra bracing underneath. So a little bit of basic carpentry. The cross members I've obviously just taken a knock out of there in the middle, and I mentioned about replacing this front cross member with a piece of CLS, which I think is Canadian Lumber System. I'm not making this up. And I've taken a chunk out of there, so that should fit in there. And obviously this is quite a meaty piece of timber. I think it measures 2.5 by 1.5, and in new money that is 35mm by 60mm. So a nice piece of CLS across the front there and screwed in. As you've noticed, I don't actually glue in my timbers, which some might shun, but at the end of the day, because I change their mind, they come out so regularly, it's easier just to bolt them in. Hopefully that'll do to brace it all up. Let's turn it back over and put it back on the layout. Well, this is the original cunning plan, and I don't think we've gone too far from it, to be perfectly honest. This area here, there's a bit of a gap underneath here, but well, I can live with that. I'm no carpenter, as you gathered. The glue's eased through, but then at least I have the reassurance then that it is adequately glued down. There won't be this vertical member here. The idea is this CLS should be strong enough to hold this in situ, because what I'd like to do in here is be able to get some kind of a workbench underneath that I can pull out and do my modelling on, either that or a sort of a computer type terminal. But that's just as a byproduct really, but I do want to do away with these, with the upright. And looking a little closer at the river, it's great because it does disappear out of view, though I will have to do some chalking up in here because I'll end up putting a resin down and obviously it will just leak off the back. And obviously this board has got to be absolutely level for the resin to run, and hopefully you saw the video where I did the viaduct when I poured that resin on. The bank seems a little steep at 45 degrees, but I thought, well, I can always shave some off or sort of Dremel some away to make it steeper, but it's a good sort of starting block. This board will also become more exciting because over the top of here will come the raised line that will end up going out to the branch line, so that will march its way straight across here. And with the river I can have, you know, the picnic area, guys fishing, all these kind of things that sort of go along with the river scene. And what I didn't want to do obviously was just put more and more track down and make it like another Martian yard. The underside of the boards here, they are clear for the points. This is a little tight, so whether that just gets moved an inch or two that way, but it's not the end of the world, just where these pieces come under. And so the next thing to do is to lay these points into place and then to reconnect up with this existing board over on this side. I'd like to say it was a stroke of genius using the offcuts to make up this bank on this second level, but clearly it wasn't, it was just sheer luck. And if you want to do that, then you would need to make sure your river is at least 5 foot. 5 foot. Your river is at least 5 inches across, because then that piece you take out will adequately do the others. If it's much more narrow, then you won't have enough for those 2 inserts. So yeah, 5 foot. It does go down to about 4 inches at the far end, but if you keep it wide, that will give you these offcuts to double up as a stepping sort of step down to allow your river to have some depth. Well, I quite enjoyed that. There was a few hours in the sunshine today and yesterday, getting that glue to dry and everything else. But it wasn't really that hard a thing to do. So if you've got a layout that you can get a board and get a jigsaw in and modify it, or of course if you're at the early stages of a build, there's no reason why you can't get a little river in it as well, because it does give you that extra dimension of depth, you know, as well as height with bridges and everything else. I'm already thinking about the finer points, the finer details that I can put around the river, you know, such as a small footbridge, you know, a pedestrian footbridge going across, sewerage pipes up against the railway lines, all those kind of, you know, the finer points and the finer details. So that would be an interesting feature to develop, and there's no reason why you couldn't have one as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed it, and if you have, then let me know down below. And in the meantime, I would sincerely thank my patrons for making this possible, and of course please don't forget to subscribe. It is free, and there should be a video here, and I'll see you next week. In the meantime, stay safe, stay in, take care, bye bye.